Hello everyone and welcome to the channel. I'm Emmanuel, I'm a Boeing 737 pilot and a member of PMDG's tech team. Today software update 10 has been released for Microsoft Flight Simulator, and while I'm waiting for my 737 WASM module to compile, which usually takes like 16 minutes-ish, I am just about giving you the most important bullet points in my opinion of what you need to know now and of what people talked about the most. So, first of all, is the PMDG 737 ready for software update 10? The answer is, at least with the latest beta that's been out before the official SU-10 release, it worked totally fine. I have not yet done a flight with the SU-10 since I've just flown for 12 hours in real life today. However, I do not expect any problems to occur with software update 10. However, with SU-10 released, in order to take the full benefits of the new features, you should update your graphic driver to the latest version as recommended by Asobo and Microsoft. Now let's come to the most important question that most of you are probably going to ask. When is the weather radar going to come? And the unfortunate answer to that is, I'm not sure if it's going to come at all, at least with this particular version of Microsoft Flight Simulator. Let me explain on that. In order to simulate a weather radar, you need three-dimensional information of where the precipitation is. And the way a weather radar works is that it is scanning the area in front of you, and then the radio waves from the weather radar are bouncing back from the raindrops from the precipitation, and that is being measured by the weather radar and then shown to the pilots. The most important thing here is that a weather radar is three-dimensional, and in my particular airline we have two different types of weather radar. We have a very old conventional one on our older airplanes, and on that radar the pilot has to set the tilt of the weather radar antenna manually. It is being compensated for by the airplane, by the way, for changes in pitch. So the pilot has to select in between 15 degrees nose up or nose down, and usually you use the antenna anywhere around 5 degrees. Now, the problem with that is that even then you need a three-dimensional image of the weather in order to create your picture, because you don't want to know what you could see top down, because you want to know the weather that's going to affect your flight path. And that is what the weather radar is there for. Now let's quickly talk about the more modern version of the weather radar that we have on the majority of our airplanes. And actually, I don't think I've flown any airplane with the old weather radar for at least a year or so. So with the new weather radar, the radar is scanning three-dimensional all the time. So there is no manual tilting of the antenna anymore, but it is automatically scanning all the altitudes in front of you. And then it creates a digital three-dimensional image, which is then processed by the weather radar's computer in order to show the weather that is going to be relevant for your flight. Now, that basically means that the computer has the complete 3D image in its memory, and then it calculates, okay, so if we are climbing, where are we going to be at which altitude? And then it calculates, okay, so this weather is significant for our flight, and this weather is not of interest for us. And the weather that's not of interest is shown dashed out, while the weather that is actually interesting for us is going to be shown in the normal colors as you would expect. Now, on the radar you have the possibility to select a manual mode, and in manual mode, in the modern weather radar, you can then tell it which altitude you want to see. So, with the old weather radar, you would simply select a tilt of the antenna, but with the new weather radar in manual mode, you would simply select the weather at a particular flight level or altitude that you want to see. And this can be changed in steps of 1,000 feet. So basically, let's say when you're approaching an airport and you have a missed approach that you want to take care of, then you would, for example, well, use the automatic mode, of course. But if you, for whatever reason, wanted to use manual mode, then you would scan it in the altitudes that are applicable to the approach. However, here's the problem with software update 10. We are not getting any three-dimensional weather information. Instead, what we're getting is a two-dimensional bitmap seen from top down that simply shows us the most significant weather regardless of altitude. Now, let's talk about why that is unsuitable for a weather radar. First of all, let's say you have a typical thunderstorm, a typical cumulonimbus. Then it would usually range in between, at least here in Europe, it would usually range in between the ground and for up to flight level 400-ish, usually a little bit lower. I tend to say most thunderstorms go somewhere around 35,000 feet here in Europe. And there's usually some secondary weather next to it that then only goes to 15,000 feet and so on. Now, if we had a two-dimensional display that we would look down on, then that secondary weather would seem like a primary target because we don't know that it's 20,000 feet below us. The weather radar would give us a red indication and we would think we couldn't fly there. Well, when you're looking outside the window, there's going to be blue skies. You can fly there without any problem. By the way, a typical limit that you should have in terms of vertical clearance above a thunderstorm is 5,000 feet at least. And if the thunderstorm itself is going somewhere around 30,000 feet, then you shouldn't overfly it at all. Now, what if you had a typical local thunderstorm? Let's say a couple of normal CBs with a little bit of rain coming out of them and everything. They may be somewhere down below 10,000 feet. And on the two-dimensional bitmap that we're getting from Asobo, you're going to get a red weather return. Now on the weather radar, when you're cruising along, you're going to see a red return. But when you're looking outside, there's going to be nothing. And you can fly there without any problems. The same thing applies the other way around. So when you are flying at lower levels, it happens just as often that the actual activity in the weather cell is far high above the ground. And when you're looking outside and you see there's no precipitation coming out of it, then you can fly below it without any problems. Of course, it requires a little bit of judgment from the flight crew. So you can't just in general say that you can fly below any CB just because you don't see anything. There might as well be hail coming out of it, strong turbulence, etc. But under certain circumstances, you look outside, you see there's a huge CB above you, but it starts only at 10,000 feet. You can fly below it at 3,000 feet if you see nothing coming out of it. And once again, the weather radar, with the current source that Microsoft and Asobo are giving us, would simply give you a big red return. And that would simply be unrealistic. So, you get what I'm saying here. The whole idea of the weather radar is that you can do weather analysis, that you can plan your way around weather, and that you can plan your way through weather if applicable. If you have a big squall line, then it might very well be that you'll just have to find that little gap that you can go through. And that gap may very well exist at a higher altitude, but not at a lower altitude. So, what now? With a real-life weather radar, it would be easy to find those gaps and to go through them. But with what Asobo is giving us, it would simply be impossible. And that, in basic terms, means with the current data that Asobo is giving us, it is simply impossible to in any way simulate a realistic weather radar. And therefore, I'm not sure which course of action PMDG is going to take. I am not currently involved in weather radar development with them, so they have to make their own decisions. But I know that, for example, Phoenix has already said that the current data provided from Microsoft and Asobo is simply not suitable for simulating a weather radar. Alright, so that's 7 minutes covered. In total we are at 9 minutes and 30 now, and my simulator has actually finished loading. So that means loading times for the 737 for the first time when it is compiling the WASM module have actually decreased by approximately 50%. That's also something that they have worked on with the software update 10, by the way, so I'm very happy to see that this is actually working. So, lots of talking, lots of theory in here, but I hope that you kinda enjoyed it and that you could follow along. If you have more questions on the weather radar and the way they actually work, then please put them in the comments below and tell me your experience with software update 10. Are you enjoying it, or is there anything significant that you think is lacking except for the weather radar? Thank you very much for your attention. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. Leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so yet. And finally, if you do want to support the channel, then I would, as always, be very glad for a small donation through the Buy Me a Coffee link that you can find in the video description below. Until then, thank you very much for your attention, and enjoy the new update.